Welcome to the Kove 450 Rally. Buckle up, baby. The Chineseiums.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
A cheap copy.
I'm gonna have to turn that ABS off because I'm gonna kill myself otherwise. Oh, sorry, sup guard.
But let's talk about that power.
Go on, find some grip, baby.
50-ish horsepower feels fantastic.
Go on, Kove. Come on.
I feel like I'm riding it rather than it riding me. You can chop it open coming out of corners and it's not going to kill you.
Woo!
You could be excused for thinking might be a little bit crap.
I'm really starting to gel with this bike.
The stock setup is superb.
Oh, that was a shit line.
The balance of the chassis, that was really bad English. That they've got the fundamentals right.
You could ride to the Alps on it.
They've basically nailed it. Welcome everybody and welcome to the Kove 450 Rally. The 450 Rally has indeed been around for a few years now. This model that you see here is the standard model. It is Kove's foray into the rally bike world. They also make the Kove Rally Pro. The Pro gets you a few added extras. Comes with bib mousses in the tyres. It comes with a Scott or a equivalent steering damper. It also comes with a carbon fibre rally tower, an ECU, race ECU, reflash and a titanium system. That will cost you £13,500, whereas the standard model here comes without a few of those extras and it costs you £8,500. Now, that is if you take into account other rally bikes from other brands, that's considerably cheaper. Many of those bikes come in at between £20,000 to £25,000 as maybe a home build, up to £45,000-ish if you were to buy something like the CRF 450 Dakar rally bike that you can import. That's quite a difference. So what exactly does that £8,500 get you? Is it good enough, or is it actually, dare I say it, a cheap copy? You're going to want to stick around because there's a lot to talk about with this bike, and I'm going to tell you all about it, warts and all. So, in the standard guise that you see here, what does your money get you? Well, it gets you 300-ish millimeters of Yuan fully adjustable suspension front and rear. More on that later on. It also gets you a rally-esque front end. It gets you 30 litres of fuel storage, about 8 to 10 in the front and roughly 16-ish litres, maybe a little bit more in the back depending on how much you manage to cram in, but it's circa 30 litres and about 300 miles plus of range. It comes with this carbon fibre sump guard, also more on that later. It comes with the, in China, very well known Zongshen 450cc single cylinder engine. A seat that you can sit on nearly all day, and despite all of the above, its curb weight sits at around 145 kilos. I have seen some other people, some other YouTube reviewers that have reviewed this bike and they've weighed it. It's probably more reasonable to say it's 150 to 155 kilos with some fuel. That's still quite light when you consider the kit that's on this bike. Personally, I think it looks fairly superb. It does genuinely look like a Dakar replica. Both models, this and the Pro, come with a 140 18 section rear tyre and a 90 section 21-inch front tyre. You can see I've got knobblies on it because I went to an enduro track yesterday, which you'll see some footage of. With that 300 millimeters of travel front and rear, you get a whopping 310 millimeters of ground clearance. I mean, that's mad. That is genuinely enduro-esque territory. 310 millimeters of ground clearance. That's pretty impressive. Now, maybe a slight downside to that is that this, in the standard, or as I'll call it, the high model, because they also do a low seat, it's a 960 millimeter seat height. That's high. I'm 5'7", and in case you hadn't worked out, I'm quite short in the leg. I managed to ride it all weekend with minimal issues, but I have spent a lot of time on enduro bikes over the years, so I'm kind of used to a seat height that is higher than standard adventure bike territory. So If you're short in the leg, I think probably under 6 foot, you're going to want the lower seat, which if I was keeping this bike, I would genuinely purchase. So alongside it looking superb, I think we can all agree that it has a spec sheet that is pretty impressive. Now, I know you'll all be waiting for this part. How does that translate to the road, or in my case, mostly off-road? Does the £8,500 get you something that is truly usable and good competition? Well, buckle up, baby, because there's a lot to talk about. Here we go. When I picked this bike up, it did feel initially a bit choked, is the best way to describe it. A little bit tight. Now, new engines generally do feel like that, but this felt particularly kind of choked up and tight. Now, Kove claim 51 horsepower-ish out of this 450 single cylinder. Did it feel like that initially? Honestly, no. Now, stick around because I'm going to talk more about that as we move on. Let's just say it did free up.
The engine is definitely freeing up a bit. Even in just the last couple hundred miles, I've noticed it doesn't feel quite so tight, which is pleasant actually, because it felt a bit, not sluggish, but just a bit tight when I picked it up, whereas now it's definitely spooling up a bit quicker, which is cool.
On the road, what I will say, it was happy to plod along at 65, 70 mile an hour. The revs was about 5,500 RPM, 6,000 RPM. And actually what surprised me the most is it was very little buzz. I was fully expecting, having ridden, you know, bigger CC thumpers before, they tend to vibrate and buzz when you're on the road. I was pleasantly surprised by this. I did about 110 miles straight off the bat, out the door, strapped some luggage on the back of it and sat on a motorway for about an hour, and then I did 2 hours of A/B roads from there to get to my start point for the weekend. And I was pleasantly surprised how fresh I felt when I get off. The seat is actually quite comfortable, and as I say, actually very little buzz from the bike at all. So that's a plus from me. Maybe added by the fact that, as standard, Kove put these little polymers in the bars. I can't vouch that that isn't gimmicky, but as I say, maybe it does take some buzz out of the handlebars. If it does, then great. That's a really nice touch, so thanks, Kove. There's also plenty of wind protection from this rally-esque front end, minimal buffeting, sat at 70, like I say, 60, 70 mile an hour, actually very comfortable. I could have sat on it for much longer, actually. Pleasantly surprised. The headlights are a bit meh. There's minimal penetration from those headlights, but you know, things are built to a budget, so you kind of have to expect that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chineseiums, the slight Chinese quirks. Now, maybe it's not fair to call them Chineseiums because all brands have their issues. You know, KTM had a slight issue with camshaft failure, so that's how that one turned out. So maybe calling them Chineseiums isn't fair, but you know, in this instance, let's just go through some of the little quirks that kind of felt a little bit odd to me. The ABS has a slight tendency to turn itself back on. Not that often, only a handful of times, but you do need to keep an eye on it. I've no idea why it turns itself back on, but it does.
I'm going to have to turn that ABS off because I'm going to kill myself otherwise. ABS mode. Off all, please. Thank you.
Also, occasionally the bike wouldn't start in gear. So, you know, you come up to a gate or you stall the bike, for instance, and you immediately go to restart it. If it's in gear, it's occasionally wouldn't start in gear, and I had to find neutral to start the bike. It seemed to do that a little bit totally randomly, and then it wouldn't do it again for like an hour and several starts. So again, just little quirks that I'm not entirely sure why that's happening, but the carbon sump guard, whilst it probably keeps the weight down and it looks cool, it is quite sturdy, but when you start really riding it off-road, probably not up to the level of some of the aftermarket sump guards. Now, that's entirely dependent on what type of riding you're going to do on this bike. For me personally, I'm going to put a slightly chunkier sump guard on it.
Whoa, sorry, sump guard.
The second O2 sensor on this bike, again, I understand that they have to fit this with Euro 5 plus bikes, and that sort of O2 sensor positioning there for me is just waiting to get ripped off. However, I did do 600 kilometers off-road in 3 days on this bike, and it's still there, and I did ride some pretty gnarly stuff.
Oh, we're fighting it. Come on, Kove. Come on. Come on, find some grip, baby. Woo! on, baby. Come on. Come on. Keep her going. Keep her going. Oh!
I feel like this Euro 5 Plus thing is bringing a real issue to motorcycle manufacturers, and the fueling is very, very choppy. The idle is a bit erratic, shall we say. It peaks and then falls again sometimes. I would personally immediately remove that cat, remove the O2, quick reflash of the ECU and maybe a different airbox. And honestly, it's not that expensive to do on these bikes, so I think for probably 500 quid-ish, you could fix most of those little fueling gremlins. But let's talk about that power, albeit lackluster on the road. Off-road, 50-ish horsepower feels fantastic. Now, the problem I personally find, and you know, if you watch Adam Ryman, he's very often been heard saying on videos that these 70, 80, 90, 100, 110 horsepower off-road bikes are ludicrous for actually riding off-road. And I actually agree, you can't use them. I've ridden a decent handful, more than actually, upwards of 10 larger capacity adventure bikes with 80, 90, 110 horsepower, and you can't use it, at least not at my level, the mere mortal's level of riding ability. This bike, 50 horsepower, I feel like I'm riding it rather than it riding me. You can use all of that 50 horsepower, you can get the throttle position wrong, you can chop it open coming out of corners, and it's not going to kill you. In fact, you can come out of corners, lock the throttle open, initiate a slide and just hold it there. It is fantastic when you get it going. Slow speed, technical stuff on this bike, whilst it's not designed to do that, it's not its forte. The fueling is a bit, as I say, a bit choppy and a bit confused low end. When you get this bike into second, third, fourth gear on a wide open lane or flowing corners, honestly, it's one of the most fun machines I've ridden off-road.
I'm really starting to gel with this bike. It's superbly versatile, which I think is what most of us are looking for now, or at least those of us that sort of favour the off-road. We still want something that we can ride to the trails on, and it's not utter purgatory like it is on an enduro bike. I mean, I know, I've done it for years as well. There'll be some of you out there that's like, I ride to the trails on an enduro bike all the time, Adam. Yes, you are right. You can do it, of course, but it's not, oh, that was a shit line. But it's not. Why did I follow him down here? It's not favourable. Whereas actually this comfortably will get you to the trails. Keep this, I think it's a 13-tooth cog on the front. You could ride to the Alps on it.
The balance of the chassis. There's enough tautness to it that it feels tight in corners, but it's also forgiving enough to send it off things to flat, use all 300mm of travel. The suspension, once again, this Yuan suspension that you could be excused for thinking might be a little bit crap because you've never heard of it. The stock setup is superb. It soaks up everything you throw at it. Again, I was truly, honestly, no one pays me to say this, I was truly blown away by how balanced and sort of comfortable yet retaining poise that this bike, that was really bad English, but that's what it is. I was genuinely surprised how good this bike handles rough, choppy stuff. And more than that, how quickly and comfortably, confidently you can just flow through terrain. It was honestly sublime. Really impressed. It does give you the option on this bike, as I said earlier, to carry 30 litres of fuel. When I first started going off-road, I just filled up the 2 front tanks, which is about 8 to 10 litres, easily 100 miles. I did at one point, just for the purpose of testing, fill the rear tank up as well, roughly 28 to 30 litres on the bike. What I found when I rode that on rutted, choppy, rocky single track is that it did kind of bring into act a bit of a weird balance to the bike. As the fuel in the back kind of sloshes around and the bike sits down a bit, the front feels a little bit wandery. I did find myself struggling to hold a line in ruts, and I was kind of like bouncing off the side.
God, yeah, that weight on the back, it just makes the bars want to wag a bit more. It's strange. Worth doing for testing reasons, but I'm not sure I'd make a habit of filling that rear tank up unless I was doing a long stint of road or easy lanes maybe.
You know, that was a choice I made from a testing perspective. Honestly, when the trail opened up and we got quite a bit of a lick on, I didn't even notice it. So personally, in future, I would, if I was doing a long trip, I'd fill it all up. If I knew I was going to be riding fast, flowy double track, I'd use a rear tank. If I knew I was going to be riding tighter, ruttier single track, I would personally just stick with the front tanks full of fuel and leave the rear as empty as I could get it. I mean, obviously, the age-old question, time will tell from a durability standpoint. We don't know yet. You know, when it's been around 10 years, maybe we'll know how this bike's going to age. There are quite a few reports of these Kove 450s now, because they've been around on the market for a few years, of having some high mileage examples of them out in the wild, 10, 15, 20,000 miles, 30, 40,000 kilometers with minimal issues. So personally, I would hope that that is going to be the case. This 450 single, whilst it's not very refined and the fueling is a bit meh, it has been around for a long time in China, I believe. So I think hopefully that won't be an issue. Certainly, whilst I had it over the weekend, I had no issues at all with the bike. Actually, I was pleasantly surprised how I chucked my luggage on the back, stuffed some fuel in it, sodded off for 3 days, riding it through water crossings up to here, almost hard enduro type lanes with minimal problems at all. It genuinely was one of the most versatile bikes I've ever ridden. It changed my view once again on what I thought this would be like. It has its quirks, as do many brands, but as soon as I got off-road and really started to push this thing on, all of those little quirks kind of disappeared. That they've got the fundamentals right. Once again, I think Kove have looked at the market and gone, what do the punters, you and I, really want? And they've almost, other than those little quirks that you could almost certainly rectify, they've basically nailed it. And on that bombshell, I will leave you with, there's a lot more coming to the channel for this bike. There's some cool bits from Outback Motortech coming to bolt onto it. Hopefully in the near future, I am going to make some of those changes that I mentioned to see how it improves or changes the ride dynamic and characteristics of this bike. I hope you like these, and if you like it, subscribe, let's engage and have some conversations. I love chatting to you all, and stick around for more adventures aboard the Kove 450. Thanks all, I appreciate it. See you on the next one.